Hey there, welcome to Expanded Knowledge. Today I wanted to make a quick video to comment on the recent Tesla bomber and his apparent revelations about UFO, suppressed technologies relating to the drone sightings and his alleged public um, action of blowing up the Tesla car on New Year's at the Trump building. So this is a pretty interesting news. The reason I really wanted to make this video is because I know this is being covered plenty out there. But when I sat down and looked at all this yesterday, there was one thing that really stood out to me, a contradiction in the different information, apparently coming directly from this whistleblower. And so I want to highlight that because I think that this is a pretty big inconsistency. And that's basically why I want to make this video here. So let's get into it now. And what I'm going to do is throw up my slides here. And so this is the whistleblower, alleged whistleblower. Um, his name is Matthew Livelsberger, and he was a Green Beret, Special Forces, apparently very well decorated, very highly ranking. Green Beret is obviously a very specialized Special Forces unit within the U.S. military. So this is, a pretty significant source to be coming forward with this information. Okay, so here's just a little bit of background about what's going on with this. Um, yes, so on New Year's, um, this Green Beret, Matthew Livelsberger, who's active, by the way, he was active in service, blows up the Cybertruck, the Tesla car at Trump Towers, and this was, of course, throughout the news. Now, they found on him apparently, and I haven't dug into the media coverage meticulously, but apparently the body was not identified as of yet. However, they did find an ID on him, which you see in that image there, conveniently, right? But they found also a note, okay, that he wrote, your typical, manifesto suicide note, which, whether it's real or not, always there's certainly plenty of evidence throughout the longer history of the intelligence and national security state here in the U.S. where such things are planted. There are multiple cases of that, so there's reason to wonder about that. Now, of course, this note comes out and it's announced. Excerpts of the notes are announced, his suicide manifesto note, why he did it, all that, like you see with the Luigi Mangione case as well. And now, but what happened just the other day is that he, Livelsberger, sent an email to another intelligence officer named Sam Shoemate. So it's an interesting name, but anyway, Sam Shoemate. And then what Shoemate did was he actually shared the email directly to Sean Ryan, the popular podcast, and before he then informed the FBI and began working with them at looking at the information. And basically, in the third bullet point there, this email that he sends basically claims why he did the Tesla truck bombing and his knowledge about U.S. war crimes and alleged secret technology that's behind the drones. So you have probably seen this covered, or you can get the basic breakdown here. So rather than go over exactly what's in the whole email, um, I want to just point out what I found to jump out at me after reading them. I basically looked at the basic information and then I read his email that was shared on Sean Ryan, and then I read the excerpts from his alleged suicide note. All right. Um, so let's look at that. Okay. As you can see, Sean Ryan posts here, he puts the real email / manifesto. Okay, implying maybe that he thinks the notes that have been publicized in the media perhaps are not real, perhaps are planted. So if we look at this, okay, if we look at his email here, I'm going to just highlight the key inconsistency. Now, what he does say here, I'm going to just paraphrase. He does say that the drones are, and this is important in this third paragraph down. He says, what we have been seeing with, quote, drones is the operational use of gravitic propulsion systems powered aircraft by most recently China and the East Coast, but throughout history, the US. Only we in China have this capability. Okay. Um, our ops and location for this activity in the box is below. Okay. And I'm assuming that's referring to apparently he dropped a pin in this email, and apparently this leads out to basically Area 51, the infamous, notorious Area 51. Okay. So he's saying our operational center for the anti-gravitic propulsion aircraft that the US has had throughout history. Apparently, he's dropping a pin at Area 51, Groom Lake, Nevada. And so, in its essence, there, though he is saying that the drones are apparently from China, which is interesting, I definitely have doubts about that, but it's possible. Um, the more important point I think here is that he says throughout history, the U.S. So that's implying a long history of U.S. Secreted anti-gravitic technology is what this individual is claiming in this email he sent. Okay, so he goes on to say China's been deploying them, and he's basically saying, more in a kind of in a threat narrative way here in this paragraph. He's saying that they have an unlimited payload capacity and can park it over the White House if they wanted. It's checkmate. All right, so maybe that's true, but he's also saying we have the technology too, and so yada 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 goes on to say that, okay, he says this is interesting here. He says I've been followed for over a week now from likely Homeland or FBI. They are looking to move on me and are unlikely going to let me cross into Mexico. They know I'm armed. I have a massive VBIED, which means a vehicle-borne explosive device, something like that, the Cybertruck. He says, I've been trying to maintain a very visible profile and have kept my phone, and they're definitely digitally tracking me. Okay, so that's interesting information. Now, in the last paragraph here, and this is where the key inconsistency comes from. Okay, so here's where we want to lock in here. He says, I have knowledge of this program, the UAP program, apparently, and also war crimes that were covered up during airstrikes in Nimruz province, Afghanistan in 2019 by the administration. Very important right there. Okay. DOD, DEA, and CIA, the usual suspects. I conducted targeting for these strikes on over 125 buildings, killed hundreds of civilians in a single day. They continued airstrikes after spotting civilians, and basically, yeah, these were war crimes. But the UN called these war crimes, he says, but the administration made them disappear. I was part of that cover up. And he says, I don't know if my abduction attempt is related to this. And basically goes and gives names that are redacted on who can validate that this happened. Okay, so perhaps maybe the most significant thing, even though he is making UFO claims here of secret programs, apparently even at Area 51, equally, if not more important, is he's blowing a whistle here, apparently, on war crimes committed by the United States military, bombing, knowingly bombing innocent civilians. Now, this is not really new. We had the WikiLeaks with Julian Assange in the early 2000s, or whenever that was, um, in the last 20 years or so. And that showed, the videos of the pilots like laughing about dropping bombs and killing, innocent civilians, and laughing about it and being vulgar about it. So this doesn't come as much of a surprise to me. But okay, but here's the really key thing. Okay, and again, this is the whole point I made, even wanted to make this video today, is he says war crimes that were covered up, killing hundreds of civilians in a day in 2019 by the administration. That means the presidential administration. And in 2019, that would have been Donald Trump. Okay. Um, and he goes and again implicates and accuses the administration, the Donald Trump administration, of covering up these war crimes when he says the UN called these war crimes, but the administration made them disappear. Okay? So he's blowing the whistle about this. And he's condemning the Donald Trump administration for covering this up. Now, this is significant because here what you see on the screen are excerpts from the alleged notes that he left. These came before the email to Sam Shoemate appeared the other day. These notes discovered by authorities were given to the media before that. And he says, fellow service members, veterans, and all Americans, time to wake up. We are being led by weak and feckless leadership who serve only to enrich themselves. Military and vets move on DC starting now. Militias facilitate and augment this activity. Occupy every major road along Fed buildings and the campus of Fed buildings. Lock the highways with semis. Hold until the purge is complete. Try peaceful means first, but be prepared to fight the Dems out of the federal government and military by any means necessary. They all must go, and a hard reset must occur for our country to avoid collapse. Okay, so right away, the manifesto notes have him targeting the Democrats in Washington, and basically inciting violence, inciting a storm on the Capitol, an armed, violent storm on the Capitol, which is interesting. And then he goes on to say, "We are the United States of America, the best country people to ever exist. But right now we are terminally ill and headed towards collapse." He goes on to list, why. He goes on. He talks about family values being corrupted. Uh, you know, children addicted to screens. People are out of shape, and goes on and on. We must take action. Okay, here he says we must take these actions if we are going to make it past the next few years. We must end the war in Ukraine with a negotiated settlement. It's the only way. Okay, so he's advising against continued war, and the continued so-called forever wars. He's speaking for an end to war in that sense. Now, he onto the third page here, which is our last page here, and this is where I think the key piece is that we'll get to on the bottom. He goes on to talk about other things that he thinks are a issue here. He says, "Thankfully, we rejected the DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion candidate, and will have a real president instead of weekend at Bernie's." So again, this narrative of Republicans versus Democrat, Trump's the savior, and the evil Democrats type of narrative. We must move on from a culture of weakness and self-enrichment perpetuated by our senior political and military leaders. We are done with the blatant corruption. Our soldiers are done fighting wars without end states or clear objectives. Okay. So again, anti-war, anti-elite corruption and all of that. And then about his act, he says, "This was not a terrorist attack. It was a wake-up call. Americans only pay attention to spectacles and violence. What better way to get my point across than a stunt with fireworks and explosives? Why did I personally do it now? I needed to cleanse my mind of the brothers I've lost and relieve myself of the burden of the lives I took. Consider this last sunset of 24 and my actions the end of our sickness and a new chapter of health for our people. And here's the key part: rally around the Trump, Musk, Kennedy, and ride this wave to the highest hegemony for all Americans. We are second to no one. So, that last point there, I just find this message very um, conflicting with his email, with the email message. Because in the email message, like we showed twice, he's um, accusing the Trump administration of war crimes and covering them up, which is part of the reason that in this note he's doing this act. As he said, to cleanse my mind of the brothers I've lost and the burden of the lives I took. So, on the one sense, he's criticizing Trump and the Trump administration for doing that. But then here, he's saying to rally around Trump and, quote, ride this wave to the highest hegemony for all Americans. Supporting and rallying around hegemony, like, which is, like the neoconservative agenda has been through the decades now of asserting U.S. military power abroad to basically dominate and control, economically, politically, militarily. I mean, that's what the implication clearly is by saying hegemony. So it's just like a conflicting message. On the one hand, he's criticizing the corrupt military, political, and financial elite, and but then saying to rally around hegemony and rally around Trump. And Trump is a, as he says, what does he say here? Thankfully, we have a real president now. Okay, so it just makes me think, are both of these completely genuine? Because again, he's blowing the whistle on the Trump administration here for war crimes, killing innocent civilians in Afghanistan in 2019. So I find it odd, um, to say the least there. And that was really what I wanted to point out and kind of share my 2 cents here, is on that analysis. Is hopefully people might talk about that, pick up on that a little bit more, because that throws question into the provenance and the authenticity of these documents, and they're complete. We would think maybe the email would be a little more reliable because the notes are excerpts from the authorities shared to the media and then kind of typed up. So in wrapping it up here, some thoughts uh, about all of this. Okay, we covered the first bullet point, which was really the point of the video. The second bullet point, let's take a moment to talk about his gravitic propulsion claims. Again, he says it's existed throughout history in the U.S. But the now recently China has been using these. And to the third sub bullet point there, what I found a little confusing is he's saying that these drones are testing that, um, but I, I thought that the thing that made people realize they were drones was the loud drone buzzing noise they make. And of course, as anti-gravitic craft have been reported to sound, they have no sound, or they have a slight humming or buzzing, but barely audible. So I'm a little bit confused about that. Maybe it's because there's been a mixture. I don't really know. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors around this whole drones uh, cases. And in the last bullet point there, sub bullet point of bullet point number 2, a few weeks ago, we did hear Stephen Greer say quite, blatantly on a massive podcast. It was on the David Spade and what's his name? The other Saturday Night Live comedian, Dana Carvey podcast. They have a huge following. This video got over 1 million views. And Stephen Greer said, that he had a whistleblower ready to come forward who was going to be coming forward in the next few weeks with clear evidence of U.S. UFO programs, not just crash retrieval versus engineering, but actual alien reproduction vehicles, as he calls it. And there's a clear correlation here. I mean, Greer did say that this was a Green Beret Special Forces individual. So obviously Matthew Livisberger here was a Green Beret, and is this the guy? I don't know. Maybe. If it was, this is probably not the ideal way that we would want what Greer said was going to, change the game, be a whistleblower, because really there's not so much we can go from here. There's some information. Ultimately, it can all be kind of swept under the rug and, craftily obfuscated. And I don't think anything, game changing will come from these revelations. Maybe I'll be wrong, but is this the same guy? I don't know. The third bullet point: claims of being followed, being tracked by the FBI. This is an interesting element to this, because some people are thinking, was this even really him? Did he plant this Cybertruck thing as a sort of distraction? I mean, he is, the special forces operative, active. Did he plant this as a sort of decoy so he could escape? Not out of the realm of possibility. Interesting to think about. And that really leads us to that last bullet point question here. Was this a true act of activism? Like you said, bring attention by doing something destructive, and that raises a lot of attention, but within that kind of have a message. Maybe, and was he ultimately trying to blow the whistle on the UFO secrecy? Did he really work at Area 51 and see what was going on there? Really don't know, but this is quite interesting. And if this is all genuine and not some counterintelligence operation, which unfortunately I just think anything is always possible to be that. But if it's not, if it's genuine, props to the gentleman, Sam Shu. I forget the end of his name. But and sharing this email directly to Sean Ryan and publicizing it to the mass media, right to the public, before this could be taken in by intelligence stories and then never see the light of day. At least we get a chance to look at the document here and analyze it like we did here. I think there is that glaring inconsistency. Again, to just recap it here, he flat out accuses the Trump administration of covering up war crimes in 2019, of killing innocent civilians, something that haunted him. And then in the suicide note, he's praising the Trump administration and saying to rally behind them. So I think that there's an important question there to be answered, and I guess we'll see where this goes. Will this gentleman reemerge, or will other information come out? We shall see. Hopefully, something can come out of it. At any rate, I gotta get going. Thank you again for watching. Hope you're doing well out there, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.